I'm sorry. Hey there, guys. What's up? It's Autobot Mike 18 here, back with another TV episode review. Guys, I hope you enjoyed my tears. They were real, by the way. No, I could actually do pretty good fake crying. But anyway, guys, yes, that's my emotional response after watching tonight's episode of The Walking Dead, which I'm going to be reviewing right now. That's right, guys, another TV episode review. This time, I'm going to be reviewing, I almost said Season 2, Season 6, Episode 3, Thank You. This is the newest episode of The Walking Dead. Just aired, guys. Just watched it now. I'm going to give you my thoughts. And yeah, surprisingly, guys, I didn't know if I'd be able... So far, I've been able to bring you guys these reviews like right after the episode airs. I've been really lucky. I haven't been busy on Sunday nights as of late. Hopefully that won't change. But yeah, guys, so I just watched the newest episode of The Walking Dead. And in case anyone has never been familiar with my reviews, especially for this episode, spoiler heavy. Okay, if you have not seen tonight's episode of The Walking Dead, thank you. If you haven't seen Season 6, Episode 3, turn this video off right away, because I'm going to literally ruin the entire episode for you. And if what happened in tonight's episode is true, it's going to be even worse. Okay? So, first off, spoiler warning. You've all been warned in case anyone has not seen the episode. I'm serious. If you guys even watch my video, like my Walking Dead reviews, but you don't watch the show, don't watch this, okay? Because I'm going to ruin the episode. I'm going to ruin the series for you. Okay? But let me just, yeah. That guy right there, just patting his character. There's his image. Okay. Anyway, guys, let's move on. Just getting into tonight's episode of The Walking Dead. I think last week's episode was extremely successful in what they were trying to do, because I think I still feel that the season 1 premiere was not utter crap, but it was not good, and I think last week's episode severely picked up, and I was really interested to see where they were going to continue with Rick and that side of the group, their storyline after the premiere, because in the premiere we got introduced to Rick and Michonne and Glenn and some of the Alexandrians, Daryl and all them, and they're planning to move a giant herd of walkers. Now that plan obviously went sour in the end of the season 1 premiere because the wolves started attacking, and the large horn of the truck that slammed into the Alexandria outer walls, and so that led the plan astray, and now Rick and the Alexandrians, his group and the Alexandrians are trying to fight to essentially, I guess, get back to Alexandria. Now, they hear the horn going off when this episode begins. Just in case you guys aren't familiar with my reviews, again, I get into the synopsis, I delve into things, I go in depth about talking about the plot and everything as I, talk about it. I talk about, all that stuff, and then I give my thoughts towards the end or throughout. So now they're fighting, they're running through the woods, they're trying to get out of this. Now this giant herd of walkers has now split in half, okay? There's thousands of walkers that were in this one pit. They led them away from there, and now with the horn sound, I would say about half of them split up. Half of them are still following Abraham, Sasha, and Daryl, who are driving very slowly on this one particular road to sort of get them away from Alexandria. Another half who heard the horn literally turned around and went into the woods towards Alexandria. And Rick and the group are running towards that way as well. They're fleeing from those walkers that are, walking towards Alexandria. And very early on in the episode, they decide that they're going to have to, not split up, but Rick is going to separate from them. He's going to go back towards one of their early points from the season premiere, pick up the RV and sort of, I guess, use that as like sort of a distraction for this herd of walkers, this half of herd of walkers that are now going toward Alexandria. Now, in all honesty, when Rick gave his plan, I never quite understood, and even with the episode ended, I still don't get what Rick was trying to accomplish with that. Maybe I missed it very early on in the episode when he announced what he wanted to do. But he tells Glenn and Michonne specifically before he leaves, if you have to, leave them behind, okay? You get back to Alexandria yourself. You don't die because of them. And that one guy with the dreadlocks, who's played by Corey Hawkins, I'm forgetting his name. I want to say it was Mitchell or Mitch something. I don't remember. Literally, half of these characters are forgettable, but like the Alexandrians are forgettable for the most part. But I just know him because it's Corey Hawkins. Overhears this and obviously isn't pleased because he was always with Alexandria. So Rick takes off, and Glenn was like, I'll go with you. And then Rick's like, no, I'm going to do this myself. You lead them back, but if you have to, leave them, okay? Because they're not going to make it. The walkers are coming. Leave them. So basically, we're focusing on Glenn and Michonne and all of them. I want to say there's about 6 Alexandrians when we start off. We end up losing 2. One guy with glasses, I think his name is Sturgis or something, runs off into the woods when they come across a small herd of walkers in the woods. He runs off in fear after firing aimlessly at one of the Alexandrians' legs. This one guy, he gets shot in the leg, now has to limp. One girl just falls over and breaks her ankle or something, and I'm like, really, writers, really? Are you really going the breaking the ankle? Come on, man, don't do that. I mean, whatever. One guy gets bitten in the back and knows he's going to die, and we kind of get into his backstory. And I'm going to be honest, I hate when The Walking Dead kind of shoves character stories down our throats. And like, oh, here's a character we've never seen before. Oh, here's their backstory. Care for them, okay? They're going to die. So try to care for them. That 9 times out of 10, that never works. It worked tonight, actually, for me. That one guy who got bitten on the back, I kind of bought into that. I like the idea that they kept him alive, number one, because he's not going to turn for a few hours. But I also like the fact that he actually had a very interesting story. He tells Michonne later midway in the episode, I was on my own. I was at my lowest low. I lost everyone. And what's his name? Aaron found me. And when we were on our way back to Alexandria, when Aaron first found me, I found this girl, my wife. Later, my wife, Betsy. We became close. We became more than close. We got married while in Alexandria. He's been in Alexandria for 3 months. Married with her for 3 months, I would assume. And now he wants to get back to sort of tell her, what you being there for me meant everything to me, essentially. And I don't know. I had never seen this guy before, but I bought that. I bought into that story. I could see myself in the apocalypse being that unlucky. Like, oh, I lose everybody, and then I found this great girl, and then I get bit in the neck. So I connected with that actually very well. I don't know. I really liked that story, actually, even though I knew that guy was going to bite the bullet. But yeah, so I enjoyed that. So I guess the episode is really split into Glenn, Michonne, until they get to this pet store. Glenn, Michonne, Corey Hawkins' character, and the rest of the Alexandrians. Rick going to get that RV, and then Daryl, we see very little of Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha leading the walkers away. But right off the bat, when we start with them, I'll just get to them to just sort of get them out of the way. Because they're really in the beginning, and then they come in towards the end in an important way. But Daryl actually leaves them out of fear that they're hearing gunfire at Alexandria, the thing with the horn. And sort of, it looked like Daryl was like going back to Alexandria, or like he wanted to go back. He saw the sign for Alexandria, and he's like, we're going to lead the walkers like another few miles, and then we're going to head back to Alexandria to help our group back at Alexandria. And they're like, no, we're supposed to do 20 miles away from Alexandria. We got to stick to that plan. Daryl's not having it, and just like up and leaves them. But then at the end of the episode, he comes back to them. I'll get into that later, why that didn't make all that much sense to me. But the focus of this episode is really on Glenn, Michonne, Nicholas, who's also in the... I almost forgot Nicholas. And Corey Hawkins' character and all them. So they're trying to lead the horde. They're trying to get away from the horde. They get a 30-minute or half-hour head start on that half of the horde that has broken away from the large horde. Okay, and they are headed back towards Alexandria, and they have to cut through this like little town. And Nicholas has to lead the way because he's been on runs. He knows the ins and outs of how to get from Alexandria back. And, so he's going to lead them, and he's tasked with that. And you can tell right off the bat that Nicholas is definitely not the best tour guide, essentially, because he keeps having these moments where he's breaking down, going into this sort of, like, PTSD stage where, like, all the audio around him just fades. He can't hear every other person around him, and you just hear that, like, ringing, buzzing sound, and they're like, come on, Nicholas, come on, we got to make a decision, let's go. And I'm just like, Glenn, you should have killed this guy, okay? You should have just cut your losses. This guy is not good for you, Glenn. Oh boy. Anyway, so they're cutting through this town, and they eventually get in. They go towards this pet shop. Because they try to find a car to get back to Alexandria. Of course, no cars are gonna work. Duh. So they hide away in this pet shop. Like, what the hell are we going to do? We got to get back to Alexandria. The herd is on our heels. We got to find some sort of a distraction or something. So Glenn gets this idea to split from the rest of them, go on a solo mission to set a building on fire, sort of use that as a distraction, which will then allow Michonne, Corey Hawkins, and Nicholas, who's leading all of them, to head toward Alexandria. And Glenn says, if I get trapped or something, you guys go on without me. And Michonne's obviously not having this. She's very close with Glenn, as we all know. She's not having this. She's like, Glenn, you're sticking with us. You're not doing this. It's like they didn't say it in the episode. I'm like, Glenn, it's a suicide mission. Don't do it. Don't do it, Glenn. So that's Glenn's proposition. And yeah, Michonne's not a fan of it. They all want to get them back, Everyone wants to go back. They don't want to leave anyone behind. Michonne and Glenn have this conversation at some point. I don't want to have to leave. They both say, we don't want to have to leave anyone behind. We're going to have to do our best to get them all back. Because these Alexandrians are very, what's the word? They're very inexperienced. Incredibly inexperienced with being in the outside world. Very. Haven't had much of it all. And there's a great scene between Michonne and Corey Hawkins' character, that I'm going to get into in a second. But Glenn decides to do this, and Nicholas says, I'll come with you, and I'll lead with you. And Glenn, is hesitant at first, of course, because him and Nicholas aren't on the best terms, because Nicholas tried to kill him. Just note, if anyone ever tries to come in the apocalypse, you're dead. You're dead. Okay, if you don't kill me first, you're dead. I'm killing you. Glenn goes off to do that, and before he does, and I immediately got this bad feeling, I'm hinting to what happens later on in this episode, right when Glenn's in the pet shop, and he pulls out the walkie, and he pulls out Herschel's watch, that famous watch that Herschel had for Glenn. I can't think of this, but not pocket watch. Pocket watch, yeah, I think it's called pocket watch. It's not because it's not a wristwatch. Pocket watch that he had passed on to Glenn when Glenn, I think, told him that he wanted to marry Maggie. I think, or right around there, when Glenn wanted that, to be, married with Maggie and everything. So he pulls it out, and he pulls out a walkie, and calls Rick, and tells Rick he gives Rick specific instructions of where to bring the RV, I think. At the same point, Rick is like slashing these zombies on this road, ends up cutting his hand, and I think he gets the RV and takes it out and heads off with it. But Glenn tells him, go here, I'm going to do this. I forget if Glenn... No, I don't think Glenn told Rick what Glenn wanted to do. His plan to light a building on fire to get the rest of the group back to Alexandria. But he ends the conversation by calling Rick a dumbass. And I'll get into it later, but as soon as that happened, I immediately just was like, I don't know about that. Like, that was the first thought that went off in my head. I love the throwback, but why now? This doesn't sound good. So anyway, later on, Michonne and all them are held up in the pet shop, and she has this really deep conversation with Corey Hawkins. I really like this scene a lot because I think, oh yeah, he brings up with her what he overheard Rick telling her and Glenn: leave the Alexandrians behind if you need to. Don't die for them, okay? And Michonne basically backs that up. She's saying, like, I'm with you. I'm not going to leave any of you behind. That's just what Rick said. And Corey Hawkins still, like, doesn't trust her. He doesn't want to get to trust her because of what Rick said. So he can't really trust them. Michonne basically backs up what Rick said in a sense by going into this whole, you haven't really been out there yet. And then Corey Hawkins throws back at her, yeah, I have. I've been on runs. But she's like, no, you haven't had to kill people. You haven't had to be in the positions we've been in. And, I mean, I love how she sort of goes in a throwback to the older episodes herself by saying, you've been covered in blood so much you don't know if it's yours, you don't know if it's the Walkers, you don't know if it's a friend of yours or something. And her and Rick, and people like her and Rick and Glenn, they've all been to that sort of place, and these Alexandrians really haven't. And this leaves Corey Hawkins' character just sitting there, just like in stunned silence. And Sean's absolutely right. They haven't really been there yet, and that's essentially the epitome of what, like, the last few episodes have been about in regards to the Alexandrian storyline, and in regards to the last couple episodes of season 5. Because these people, and it's basically what Rick was trying to get into in all the latter half of season 5, that the Alexandrians don't know how to deal with threats properly. They haven't been exposed to it. And, you know, Rick was absolutely right there, and Michonne is just pretty much backing it up. And she proves to Corey Hawkins' character right there that he frankly hasn't been exposed to it all, so he really can't. It's not really his place to say, "Oh yeah, you know, I've dealt with it." I mean, yeah, he's been out with it, and been amongst it, but not as bad as everybody else. So then we cut back to I'll go back to Michonne and all them. So they're held up in the pet shop. They're gonna head out. There's a rattling in the back of the store. Michonne opens this door in the back, and a walker comes out, and they have to kill it. And there's a few walkers walking by the pet shop, all right? Not the whole half of that herd, okay? Because they still have that, like, 30-minute head jump on them, but now their time is dwindling. That herd is catching up to them. But as Michonne opened that door and kills that growling walker, this one growling zombie walker lady, it catches the attention of, like, 3 walkers, walking by, and they walk towards the store, and as they do that, you know, they've been discovered because they heard the noise. Don't ask me how they heard that noise that well. It wasn't even that loud, in all honesty, but I'll roll with it. Michonne looks through, like, the rafters of the store and sees that whole herd that they had the 30-minute lead on now coming towards them, so that they know that things are not looking good. So I'll finish it off with Michonne's storyline, and then I'll get back to Glenn and Nicholas and their mission to light that building on fire. Michonne and all them decide, you know what, we wait here and get swarmed, or we run out now and make a run forward toward Alexandria. Meanwhile, we got that girl with the broken leg, or the broken ankle, or whatever, and we got the guy who's been shot in the leg, so they definitely have some obstacles, and the guy who's bit in the neck. So they all barge throughout. They rush out the store, just running through walkers on this one street. And the girl with the broken ankle, of course, is the first to fall down. And, you know, she's like, go on without me. And, of course, they rip into her and eat her. They cut through this corner, and they get trapped. They're at this large, like, steel door, or the steel gates, and they have to climb over the gates to get to the other side, and then they'll be safe. So Corey Hawkins' character jumps over first. Then we have they help the guy with the messed up leg, and then the walkers, like, run on their tail. Michonne gets up and starts to climb, and then that same guy with the broken, he goes to climb at the same time. The walkers, like, going for their legs. Corey Hawkins' character's on the other side of the fence, and he's, like, trying to fire at the walkers' at their heads and everything to kill them, the ones that are going after Michonne's leg. Michonne gets freed and jumps over. I actually kind of worried for her. It's like, because it looked like they could easily just bite her leg. She was fighting them off, but they kept cutting away from it back to Glenn and Nicholas, which I'll get into. So that was... I don't like when The Walking Dead does that. They did that with Glenn and Nicholas, too. I'll get into that. But they do it because characters are in peril, and yeah, it's easy for them. Anyway, so the guy with the bite on his neck obviously gets pulled in and gets eaten alive. And he had a wife. He had a note to his wife that he had wrote and wanted to give to Michonne, and she wrote on her arm when they were held up in the pet shop, "You're going home," or something along those lines. So she told him to keep the note, and obviously he gets eaten alive, so that note is never going to see the wife. But Michonne, the guy with the messed up leg, the guy who got shot in the leg, and Corey Hawkins' character make it out alive and make it back to Alexandria in the end of the episode. So that's the end of that. Then we have, let's get back to Glenn and Nicholas, because they go to this one building. Nicholas is leading Glenn to this one building he knows that could easily be set on fire, very flammable apparently, and will definitely distract the horde of walkers. Nicholas leading them, and again has another bout of that PTSD where he just halts and everything around him stops, and that ringing in his ears. And Glenn is like frantically telling him, "Lead me the way, lead me." So they get to the building they wanted to use, and of course it's already been burned down somehow, so they're screwed. Then they try to. More walkers are surrounding them, like hordes and hordes have just arrived and are surrounding them. So they dash down this corner, and they get trapped. Okay, there's this one fence, there's concrete walls on the other side, and there's one fence that's got barbed wire at the top, so they're screwed. They're not jumping over the fence, there's walkers on the other side of that fence, and there's one dumpster in the middle of that fence at the end, okay? So they're screwed. So, and then the walkers are coming in from the other side, they are literally stuck in the middle. Glenn and Nicholas decide to pull out their guns and just start going in town. So they they unload all of their ammo, deplete all of it, then they get their knives out and just start knifing zombies, okay? And, of course, when it looks like they're getting swarmed, they cut back to Michonne and all of them, and I'm like, no, I don't buy this, they're gonna get eaten alive. So they eventually decide to jump onto the dumpster, and that's not going to do them that well. That's not going to be good enough for them because the walkers are now grabbing at their feet while they're, the dumpster's prohibiting them from going any further. But they can honestly just stand there, maybe wait it out. I don't know. I don't know. At that point, they really were both screwed. I don't see how either of them could have made it out. You can't climb a barbed wire fence, and you can't go the other direction because there's hordes of walkers. So it's either knife all those walkers literally one by one, just literally stand like this and just go, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, and then I don't know. But they'll be there forever, and they'll get bitten at some point. I'm assuming they'll get tired. So there's no other option. Nicholas just panics, freezes, has another bout of that PTSD, sees all the walkers, and they hold on him for like a good moment. They cut back to his like POV and how he's like seeing everything and he's not hearing anything. And I love that moment the most because you don't know whether or not Nicholas is going to jump into the walkers, kill himself somehow, or throw Glenn in just to save himself, because you still don't know if he's 100% on Glenn's side. So we don't know what's going on. Glenn sort of snaps him out of it for like a split second, but he's still like in that stage where he can't hear. He can hardly hear. And then he's looking at Glenn, and then he just looks at him and he mouths two words, "Thank you." Pulls out his gun, holds it to his head, fires, kills himself. The splatter goes all over Glenn. In the shock of the moment, we cut to a wide shot. Glenn and Nicholas both fall towards all of the horde. And in that shot, it looks as if Glenn falls first, Nicholas falls on top of him, and then we just cut to Glenn on the floor and walkers around him, and then they start ripping into flesh. At first, you don't know who it is. It looks, at first to me, it looked like they were going into Nicholas, but then you get a better picture. You watch the scene closely, and you see they are ripping into Glenn's flesh. Glenn is being eaten alive. He's dead. And they cut to this like bird's eye of all these walkers just surrounded over both of them who had just fallen, and then we cut to commercial. And they got this incredible, the music tonight was incredible, by the way. Bear McCreary, man, killed it. But apparently, guys, Glenn might be dead. I know, that was the big moment of tonight's episode. No one knows for sure, though. It hasn't been confirmed, I don't think, by anyone. we don't actually see Glenn's remains or anything. They cut away from it, and then we do not go back to Glenn and Nicholas's location for the rest of this episode. So either that was it, Glenn was eaten alive, and we're not going to see any more of them, that they're done. Or maybe they were eaten into Nicholas, and Glenn did make it out. I don't know. I'm not going to leave heavy speculation. I'll do that towards the end, actually. But I'm going to say how effective that was, because if Glenn really is dead, I was watching this with my brother and my dad, who we've been watching the show since season 1. We were all sitting there in silence. Not one of us looked at each other. Not one of us said a word. Literal silence, as we were like, what other way to show massive respect for Glenn? Like, I wasn't shouting or anything. Like, I was like, oh no, Glenn, you can get it. Like I normally would, because I'm a very loud person. Nothing. We had nothing. Just complete and utter silence, because of how much respect we've obviously had for Glenn over the past 6 seasons. So yeah, Glenn really did bite the dust, it's a shame, man. One of the best characters on the show, for sure. I mean, I'm not the type of guy who gets emotional easily, and I didn't, because I don't know for sure yet, honestly, until it's like dead-centered confirmed. I think I'll get emotional when we cut to Maggie's like reaction if Glenn really is dead. Because that was the hardest part of Beth's death for me, because I didn't care too much about Beth, in all honesty, when she died. Like, that didn't affect me. Yeah, it was upsetting to see Daryl crying, but when Maggie falls to the ground, seeing Daryl carrying Beth's body, that affected me, because I cared a ton about Maggie. Not saying I didn't care at all about Glenn, one of my favorite characters for sure, but I just don't know if it's real or not. And if it is real, then they did a great job of making us wonder, is it real or is it not? Was it a hallucination of some sort? Were they really eating into Nicholas's body and they just made it look like it was Glenn, or Glenn made it, or Glenn like played it in his head, they're eating me, I'm dead. And then I was like, maybe he did make it out of this. But then my dad also said, well, then even if they are eating Nicholas, they eat Nicholas, and then what? Then Glenn's right below him. He's not going to make it out of this unless he gets covered in zombie guts or something. I don't know. Maybe he killed a walker and got covered in the gut. I don't know. Maybe he thinks quick and just like rips a walker's face or something, gets the guts all over him and gets out of it. I don't know where they're gonna go. I don't know. But the most, like, I would say it's about a 60% chance Glenn is dead, and there's a 40% chance they're just faking us. And if they are faking us, I'm gonna give mad props to them for doing it that way. If they aren't, though, I may hold that against the show, because in all honesty, does it seem right that Glenn went out this way of all ways, not trust? I mean, yeah, Glenn's character stood the same the entire series. Glenn's character, tried to get the best out of Nicholas, and Nicholas, with those 2 words, thank you, saw that and was appreciative, I guess, but he saw at that moment, there's no way I'm getting out of this. So I think at that moment, Nicholas did that because he was appreciative of Glenn being there for him and trying to get him out of that bad place he was in. But I don't know if it was to any avail. It obviously wasn't, because Nicholas killed himself, and probably now Glenn is probably dead as a result of that. So I don't know. I like the consistency with Glenn's character, but I don't know. I really don't know. So I'll get more into that. Maybe, I don't know. Let's get back to the end of the episode. Basically, guys, the rest of the episode, Rick pulls up with the RV, tries to talk to Glenn on the walkie, getting no signal from hardly anyone, gets hold of Daryl, but then Rick gets ambushed by 2 wolves who breach the RV, which is parked in like the middle of the road, and Rick kills them both, and then he sees 3 other wolves outside of the RV in one of like the rear view mirrors, and just bullet fires into the side of the RV with like an AK-47, and then we get like a bird's eye shot, Rick in the RV, and hordes of walkers are surrounding it, and in one of those wolves' pockets he found a thing of like baby food. It looked like baby carrots or something, and then I think that made him think, oh crap, they got into Alexandria, maybe they did something to Judith. So I think he wants to go back, even though he's got to stay right there and help the rest of the group out. So the episode ends with that like last shot of Rick in the RV being surrounded by that herd. And Daryl and Abraham and Sasha are still leading their horde away. So, guys, that was tonight's episode. Thank you. No, I'm not telling you guys thank you. That's the name of the episode. I gotta say, guys, although we don't know for sure if Glenn is dead or not, no one will know until he comes back. And next week is a 90-minute episode, but it's a flashback episode to what happened to Morgan in between episode 13 Clear and when he winds up back with Alexandria, or winds up with meets Daryl and Aaron, I'm assuming, and the Wolves. So that looks awesome. But timing-wise, is that really the best timing to have that episode aired? That should have been like the season premiere or something, man. Like right in the middle of Glenn's unknown whereabouts or Glenn's possible death. They're going to give us a Morgan episode. Don't get me wrong, I'm hyped because I love Morgan. But I don't know I don't know. I just don't see it fit right. I don't know. I think that should have been the season 1 opener, season 6 opener, because it's Morgan. He's one of the big characters this season, so I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it does have a right placement. But, guys, overall, I really enjoyed tonight's episode. The only thing, if I had to complain about anything, just the cutting away from a character in peril, and then we come back and the character is still in peril, but they look like they would have already been killed. I hate when The Walking Dead does that. They do that all the time, but what are you going to do? So, other than that, and I don't have anything against Nicholas's decision or them writing Nicholas to kill himself, thus leading Glenn to Glenn's possible death. I actually, I don't know how I feel about that. I got to wait and see to see if Glenn is actually dead. If he is, I probably won't be happy with it. If he's not, I think it's a great throw-off to make us all think they killed off a major character, and they really didn't. So, in the end, everything else worked right. Like, the suspense was great tonight. The score, the action, the blood and the gore and everything, the shock value of Glenn possibly being dead. I think that all really worked. I'm going to go pretty high with tonight's episode. I'm going to go 9 point... I'll go 9.25 again. Same as last week's. I honestly don't know which one I like more. I think last week's had more action, but this week was a lot more suspenseful and it kept you a lot more on your edge because Glenn was at stake and not Alexandria. So I don't know which episode I like more, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts on tonight's episode of The Walking Dead. What did you guys think of this episode? Do you really think Glenn is dead? Do you think that was just a hallucination of his? Do you think Nicholas even really killed himself? You know, maybe it was all just a hallucination in his head. I don't really know. But even if maybe they're still at the top of that dumpster, I don't really know. I'm gonna try to be a pessimist and keep hope alive. Pessimist, optimist. Pessimist keeps hope alive, I think. Yeah, I think so. I always get those two mixed up. Anyway, guys, thank you as always for watching. I will see you in my next video. Leave me your thoughts down below. Bye, guys.